the top 10 creepiest endings to horror movies. Let's talk about it. Hello, it's Ralph Perez from Strange Planet. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing below and click on that bell for future notifications. Let's talk about that for a second. You know, growing up, I've seen many horror movies, and some of them have ended with me kind of shaken, to be honest with you. Like, oh my God, you know, like that really messed me up. Like to the point that I would have to really like think about it and process it as the day goes on or the next day or whatever, if I'm watching it at night. So what I decided was I out of many of the horror movies I've seen, I've cut down to about 10 horror movies that the ending was not just, you know, it would be creepy or shocking or maybe a little bit of both that made people go, oh my God. Here it is. In no particular order. I'm not ranking them. It's just these are the top 10 that I enjoyed, that I still like to revisit in my library from time to time. And here we go. The number one, the first one, is the famous film from the early 80s called Sleepaway Camp. If you've seen Sleepaway Camp in the context of today, it probably wouldn't be that much of a shock. It wouldn't be too much of a terror for you. But back then, it messed you up, especially the way they ended it. It was like such a weird way to end. If you haven't seen Sleepaway Camp, it's all about this young girl that's in a sleepaway camp in the summer, and you know, she's kind of victimized by the other student, you know, by the other campers and whatnot. And all of a sudden, there's a series of unexplained murders that take place, and people are trying to find out who it is. And then, you know, I mean, one thing leads to another, and then at the end, we see what happens to this girl. Or can I say girl?
How can it be?
That's the part that messed everybody up. Nobody saw that coming. At that time, nobody saw that coming. Okay? Even when I saw it many years later, it bugged me out. I was like, wow, that was creepy. I don't even think what happened, how it turned out, was so much creepy as it was the presentation of it, visually, audibly. That's what made it creepy. That's what caused the terror. That's what made it one of those classic old B horror films of the early 80s. Angel Heart. Let's talk about Angel Heart for a minute. Angel Heart has Mickey Rourke, Lisa Bonet, Robert De Niro, and you know, it's about a series of murders and all this kind of stuff. It comes across as a crime, almost like a crime drama. But at the end, we see Mickey Rourke's character like actually kind of talking to the devil, you know, played by Robert De Niro. And what was crazy about it was that at the end of the movie, the very last thing you see was that he was accused of killing Lisa Bonet's character. And she left behind a child, and they brought the baby right in front of him, and the guy tells him, you're gonna burn for this. And he said, I know. And all of a sudden you see the baby, and the baby is like, has devil eyes, and he's pointing at him. And I was like, ah! Okay, that was creepy. That was creepy as heck. That freaked me out. I lost my mind on that one. Candyman. Candyman came out, I believe, in 91 or 92. I can't get the year right. But you know, obviously, it's this has this urban kind of feel, inner city legend of a man who loved this woman who wasn't, you know, back. You know, it goes back pretty much, and he gets accused, he gets killed, but he comes back as this damned soul, and and the idea is kind of like the Bloody Mary thing. It's like if you say his name 3 times in the mirror, he comes and gets you. So the main protagonist, the girl, gets lured in and seduced by Candyman, and then at the very end of the movie, the guy, the poor guy who ends up being a jerk to this girl gets found in the bathtub because he was so mourning the death of the girl, and there was another girl. It's complicated. Says her name 3 times in the mirror, and she comes out of nowhere and slaughters him, leaving a bloody mess in the bathtub. And she's screaming, and the music is kind of like eerie, and it ends like that. And that was also quite disturbing. The Omen. Now, many of you know I'm a big Omen fan. I love the Omen series. You know, come on, this film spawned like, 3 sequels, a remake, and even a TV series that, had they kept going with it, I think would have actually gone somewhere. I'm not happy that they did that. But everybody could agree with me that at the very end of The Omen, when people flocked in theaters in 1976 to see this, and people were wondering what happened at the very end when we see Robert Thorne about to kill the young Antichrist, Damien Thorne, with one of the 7 daggers of Megiddo, that all of a sudden you see the bullet go off, but you don't know what happened. But then the next shot you see is a cemetery, and it's clear that it's back in the States because the whole movie takes place in London for the most part. And the president is there, and you don't see the president's face. And then all of a sudden the camera pans down, and you see Damien standing there, and he turns around and looks dead at the audience, and you hear that evil Latin satanic voices, and he smiles. Now, what's funny about that was that Richard Donner, who directed the movie, it was said that he was trying to get him to smile like that perfectly by, he told him, look at the camera. Harvey Stevens was the name of the actor. And he was like, don't smile at me. Don't smile at me. Don't you dare smile at me. You know how we play that game with kids, and even with adults fall for it all the time. So do I. And he just started grinning, and it was like perfect. And let me tell you, it worked because it freaked everybody out. Because as soon as you see that kid do that, we know he survived. We know Robert Thorne is dead. Everybody's dead, and the Antichrist was now, at least we knew, as far as we knew at the time, in the right by the side of the president of the United States, tying into the whole Bible prophecy thing. It immediately wiped over to the 666 reading from the Book of Revelation. Creepy stuff. Excellent ending. Creepy ending. Friday the 13th. I'm talking about the original one. Okay? Remember this? Remember when it turned out to be Mrs. Voorhees, right? Pamela Voorhees. That she was like, the one doing all the killings in the camps for revenge because of the neglect of her poor boy Jason, who drowned in the lake, right? So our young hero, the main survivor, the only survivor, she kills her. She chops her head off, and she gets in the boat, and then you hear this lovely music, and then she's in the boat, and everything's peaceful, and all of a sudden, out of the water comes a young Jason Voorhees to grabbing her, pulling her under. She wakes up in the hospital without any recollection of what happened after that. Everybody lost their minds in that film, because until that point, we just thought it was just the mother and her craziness and her maniacal whatever, and we saw her die. So for that to go down the way it did, made everybody in the theater scream and made people not go to sleep too well that night. Carrie, the original Carrie, okay? That was really good. Written by, obviously based on the novel by Stephen King and stuff. And, woo, you know how that ended, the whole pig's blood thing. That's not the ending I'm talking about, actually. That was more like the climax of the movie. I'm talking about the very end, when her friend, the only girl that seemed to at the end kind of start caring for Carrie out of guilt for having been one of the people to tease her and stuff like that. She kind of like turned around and tried to be on her side with it. She survived the fire of the prom night. So she's still in bed, and the mother's talking to somebody on the phone about how she's still trying to cope with the loss and cope with what happened. It was very traumatizing. All of a sudden, you see a dream sequence of her walking to this area where Carrie's house once stood, and it's nothing but like a big field of black rocks, like coal almost. And there's a sign, for sale sign in the middle. I don't know who wants to buy coal, but it said, somebody painted on it, Carrie White burns in hell, with the arrows pointing straight down towards the coal. And as she's putting she brought flowers to her. As soon as she put the flowers down there, the way you would at a cemetery or whatever, all of a sudden you see Carrie's hand come out of the ground and grab her hand, and the music. And it was like my hair's standing on ends because she woke up screaming. The mother's trying to like shake her out of it, but then you still see the hand. Like it shoots back to that. Like she's still in it, even though she's awake. Yo, that was great. That messed you up. That messed me up. That one messed me up. That was creepy as heck. I lost my mind. Insidious. Insidious is one of the more recent films. What was creepy about if you saw Insidious, you know that it's about this boy that went into kind of like a coma, but what he actually did was his spirit went to a place called The Further, where a group of paranormal help investigators, led by this old lady, helps the family try to get his spirit back. And there's if you watch the movie, it gets more complex. There's a connection with the father and his ability to astral project as well, and he goes to get his son back. But what we find out at the very end of the movie, and the woman, the old lady, the paranormal investigator, she was the one who kind of like picked up on this. She took a picture of him, and it turned out to be the ugly widow ghost that came back and took hold of the guy's body. Meanwhile, that means that the father's genuine soul was still stuck in The Further. And that was creepy, because with the photo and everything, I mean, that was scary. That had me going. I was like, oh my God. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a remake that came out in the 1970s. Donald Pleasance was in it. And you know how this story goes. These pods from outer space come to Earth and kind of pretty much wipe out the whole human race by replicating everybody, but they're not human anymore. They're these aliens, these plant people, and they ended up taking everybody over. At the very end, you see one of the survivors. The girl thinks that he's okay because at first he appears okay to all of us. That he kind of survived the night because it was a night of running and getting away from them and all this weird, crazy stuff. And so he's by I forgot where he was. I think he was on a bridge or by a fountain. But as she's approaching him to talk to him, all of a sudden, he points at her and that's it. We know he was taken, and that was the end. And that's how the story ends. Like the camera zooms inside his mouth, and that's how. And the credits start rolling from there. That was creepy as hell. I remember when I first saw that, I was like, "Wow, that's really messed up." You know, like nobody wins in this. Nobody. This poor girl was all alone in this, and you presume from that she was eventually taken to. Number 9, The Fog, written and directed by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Let me tell you, I love The Fog. When I first saw it, I was a kid, and I was watching it on TV when they broadcast it for the first time. And the thing that got me was the very end, because we thought the priest was able to get rid of the ghosts, right? If you saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. He had the gold, and Blake, the ghost of Blake, the pirate, came to get the gold. They were killing everybody, and then he takes it, and all of a sudden, everybody disappears. The ghost disappears. The curse is lifted from Antonio Bay. And what happens? He's like, why not me? Why not me? Like, I don't know why he wanted him to take him. But he was left alone back in the church. He's turning off all the lights. He's walking away. And all of a sudden, you see a light under the door, and all this fog start rolling in. He turns around, and they're all back again. All the pirates, they came back for him. And Blake went. He turns around. You see Blake in the background, eyes glowing red, takes a swing, jumps right into the credits. You know, that was a shocking, scary ending. And finally, in my opinion, the number 10, another John Carpenter classic, Halloween. The original John Carpenter's Halloween. Nobody knew why Michael Myers did what he did. That's the mystery of him. And when this movie first came out, there was no thing about Laurie Strode being his sister and all that. Came out in the second film. So when this movie came out in 1978, there was just this mindless man in a mask killing people. Very simple. Sometimes less is more. You got to appreciate that. You got to appreciate John Carpenter and Deborah Hill for their expert writing in this cult classic. So he's choking out Laurie at the end. Dr. Loomis shows up, shoots 6 rounds into him. He falls off the balcony of the house, hits the ground. You see him on the ground there. Then Laurie says to him,
What's the boogeyman?
Then Dr. Loomis says to her,
As a matter of fact, it was.
Then he walks over to the balcony to look down at Michael Myers' supposed dead body. And what do we see? That's right, folks. He's still alive. What was that about? People lost their minds. And you got to keep in mind, this was before Friday the 13th came out, before any of those other movies that involved some crazy psycho whatever that you think you're killing him and then he still comes back. Michael Myers was the first to do that. And as a result, it creeped everybody out at the end. Creeped me out at the end. But it creeped me out in a good way because I was like, really, wow, I loved it. I actually really enjoyed it. You know. And it obviously paved the way for the franchise to kind of take off from there and boom into those different directions it went. So there it is. Those are my 10 favorite horror movie ending, creepy endings. What are yours? Talk to me. Comment below and share with me what your creepy ending horror movies. Is it one of the ones I mentioned? And again, please consider subscribing and tap on the bell for future notifications. This is Ralph Perez from Strange Planet. Take care.